manthecrush.com.
All right, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another edition of New PsychoBabble. I'm your host, Chris Eaton. Joining me today is a man of exquisite talent. I am happy to have him here. He is currently in issue 4 of your first Create Your Own series?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
I'm Livio Ramondelli. Thank you for having me. It's great to speak to you.
Yes. So, I've known, how long have I known you now? About 10 years now?
I think 10 years, yeah. We met at Frankensons, right?
I want to say it was the ill-fated Anaheim Comic-Con.
Oh, was it?
Yes. Oh. When Wizard World remember when Wizard World was trying to, really spread their seed around and be like, yeah, we're taking up everything.
Yeah.
And they desperately tried with Anaheim, and then WonderCon said, move aside, we're moving in.
I do remember that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long time ago, though, man. That's 10 years, yeah.
It was. That was a long time. That was to where my buddy George and I, we discovered you and Joel Gomez at the same time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, man.
So, if those who are not familiar with the man, go look him up on online. Just type in Livio Ramondelli, and you're going to see some amazing artwork. And right now, we're going to talk about this man who's been... How long have you been working in comics?
I got into comics in 2007, toward the end of that year. I got hired initially, lucky enough, got hired by Jim Lee at Wildstorm. That was sort of my first job. Although I wasn't really doing comics. We were working on this DC Universe Online MMO game. Mm-hmm. Jim was the art director on that, and I was one of the I was on the team of 6 other artists, I think, and we sort of designed that whole game.
What was your job on that?
I was a concept artist, so I would basically do I was more environments and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then there was just so much stuff to design, because in MMO, by definition, you're designing whole cities, so it's everything from trash cans to big cityscapes and stuff. And so all that. And then that led me to doing conventions, where I met you, and also where I met Chris Ryle, who basically gave me his card walking by randomly and told me to submit for Transformers. And that led to about 10 years of Transformers stuff now. So.
And excuse me. And if you saw those early Transformers works, there's a very good reason why you became one of the de facto Transformer artists. I mean, I tell everyone, you got it. Every time I'm at a show, every time I'm working a show, I come by, see someone wearing a Transformer. You guys you got to go see Livio. Who's that? I'm he does the Transformer books. Just go down there. He's at this spot. And usually 9 times out of 10, we get someone who comes back with a handful of prints, and they're like, "Oh my God, thank you so much."
Thank you. I appreciate the business, man. Thank you.
So let's talk Kill Lock.
Yes.
Where did the germ of this start?
So yeah, I grew up a huge sci-fi fan my whole life, and I'd always wanted to kind of write my own, and I did it when I was younger, and they were terrible, but I really enjoyed making them. I think with this idea, the initial gem was, or the germ was this notion of characters from very different walks of life being forced to care about each other. So I first had the idea of if you had a really moral soldier who was going to be forced to take care of a psychopath, and then the psychopath had to take care of a kid, that felt like a very natural sort of dynamic to me of really forcing characters that don't like each other and would normally not interact, forced to stay together to survive. And so that was the initial thought. And then making them robots that's kind of in this sci-fi vein of it's sort of like how in Star Trek it was never Russians or it was Klingons, it was whatever, Romulans, yeah, whatever the enemy of the time in politics was. You could kind of step back with sci-fi and have a bit more metaphor for it. And so I think that's why the book, the kind of the darkness of the humor, I think it becomes more comfortable because it's robots and hopefully more entertaining than if it was human beings, Well,
I think that's one of the keys to have completely enamored people with this book. The fact that it's very human, but at the same time, it's all coming from robots. It's all mechanical, but it's they're living lives like they were, normal people.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's what I hope. Is that my hope is that like, they really feel like characters. They don't really feel like robots.
Well, let's go. Let's dive into those characters. Where did the germs of these guys start? Let's start with the obvious. Let's start with the artisan.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, it's always tricky because I think you absorb so many different influences your whole life. When you're on your road to making something like this. I think with the artisan, it's like I kind of respond to characters and stories that are unlikable. Like that's one thing I really liked about Breaking Bad was like it started to really blur the lines of like who was a good person and who was a bad person. And there's other examples like in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the way Alan Moore writes The Invisible Man. I really like that character a lot, and that also is kind of like an artisan influence. And even like Michael Douglas in The Game was another one where he's very like he says things that are just really offensive to people, but there's something still charming about him, So that was sort of the influence for the artist, and then also just the notion of, the most of their society, the guy that comes from the most elite status is the biggest asshole. I thought was kind of, he's the most vile person is technically the most intelligent, and I thought that was a nice little contrast to play with.
And when you are sitting down designing these guys, like how many designs, especially for the artisan, because the artisan is probably the most unique out of the group of four. Like just the is it a headdress or is it like part of his?
Yeah, my idea was that it is his head. I liked the notion of that design of like you think it's a full circle behind those two big plates, but it might be something else. And I thought that was a nice metaphor for his character, where especially as the series goes on, his motives are like he's an untrustworthy sort of narrator, reliable narrator.
It's interesting because I was especially reading this last issue that hit stores this past, actually yesterday. Yeah. There's a wonderful moment when the artisan and the laborer kind of have this coming to terms with each other.
Yeah.
And there's just this like kind of like life that comes out, like expressionism that comes out of the artisan, even though like they are robots. The way he designed him, excuse me, a little dry mouth. The fact that like he doesn't look like you could do a lot, but there's like so much that comes out of him, especially in that little conversation between the two about the fact that the laborer built the statue that this artisan had designed, and they were like, well, "Hey, you didn't like? Yes, we worked on that. Hey, you guys actually did not a bad job." It was such a perfect moment too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wanted that to be the first time in the series the two of them have anything remotely close to a friendship moment. Like, and then the way the artisan expresses it, I thought was very fitting to his personality, where it's the laborer did something that benefited the artisan, so that's why the artisan kind of likes him, like in that moment, like. But yeah, it's really fun in terms of the design. Yeah, like I like characters, especially in Transformers. We ran into it a lot, where characters like Soundwave or Shockwave that don't have traditional facial features, I actually really like those characters a lot. And I like tilting their head at a certain angle. You can play around with the emotion. The Wraith's another perfect example. Like that character has no human face, but it's one of my favorite designs. Like I really enjoy, people can see more into him. They can kind of understand his expression without seeing recognizable features.
And especially like, excuse me. Oh man. A lot of dry mouth today. Sorry. Let's talk about the Wraith, because especially this issue 4, we actually get we get like his backstory.
We do. I will say one important thing is that is not over yet. So there will be the continuation of his flashback. It's not over till we actually see him go to the sentencing chamber, but the rest of his flashback is in issue 6.
Oh, okay. Shit.
So there's more to him. Yeah.
Well, now between you have the artisan, you have the Wraith, and you have this dynamic of an atheist and a religious fanatic at the same time.
Yeah.
Again, that clash of ideology, people who normally would not get along with each other. Where did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, I think like exactly what you said. Like the idea of a soldier with a heart, even though he's kind of brutal, but he still has this code. Him being forced to be with someone like the artisan, someone that he would have happily killed, in his former life. Mm-hmm. Now he's forced to kind of protect this psychopath. That felt like a very natural, like interesting dynamic. Issue 4 actually has one of my favorite scenes is when he sort of puts the artisan in his place verbally, where he kind of tells him like, you think, you're teaching the kid all this stuff and you know how bad the world is, but he's like, but I've seen stuff out there that made me afraid, and you know what I'm capable of. So I that's actually a reference to something in Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's sort of inspired by, I don't know if you're a big Star Trek fan, but the scene.
Yeah, Next Generation is about as deep as I can go.
Okay, yeah. I don't remember the first time you ever meet the Borg. There's this episode where Q is talking to Picard, and Picard's a little kind of like arrogant, and Q's like, "Man, you have no idea what's out there." And he basically introduces them to the Borg. I was always inspired by that. I like that notion that he was aware of how bad things get out there.
Well, it's also interesting considering the issue before where. Sorry, I kind of lost my. Oh, shit, where the hell was I going with this? Issue 3, where that issue opened up with, you got to see what the Wraith was actually capable of. It has a wonderful moment where they land on the planet. They're to get the location of the cure to the kilo.
Yeah.
And literally, they're just looking at this wasteland, and I think it was the artisan that says, "You did all this," and he just points. He's like, "No, I did the left side." And fantastic character moment.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks. I like that moment too. I like the fact that he's so like he doesn't really have a sense of humor. He doesn't quite understand. He's like, this is an important distinction in his mind, but it's not quite what the artist was saying.
Yes, it's just like, it's that like, holy shit, you did all this. He's like, no, just that part. Like it's like just completely over his head, but at the same time still taking credit for what he was capable of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Where did the design for the Wraith? Where did you come about that? Because he's probably the most unique after the artisan out of the whole group.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it wasn't just one thing with him. I wanted a robot that was different from traditional machinery. Like I wanted it to really show that his army is very, very different from the rest of their society. So he almost has like a crustacean look to his armor, and there's no, unlike the other ones, there's no real exposed joints or wires or anything, So like. I don't know. I mean, his face is certainly inspired by things I've seen over the years, like Transformers or characters in Mass Effect, where they don't really have a human face. I always wanted to do a character like that. And then his personality is kind of like a more cranked up version of Optimus Prime, where it's like, what if, it's sort of like if you had been fighting a war for 4 million years or whatever, what would that do to you? So that's sort of he's sort of a culmination of a lot of those things. Like, I wanted him to have like the father figure aspect that Optimus Prime has, but be more brutal, like his legion is a little more questionable or a lot more questionable depending how you encounter them than a lot of kind of their heroic robots.
So kind of like the movie Optimus.
Yeah, a bit, yeah.
Well, no, because that's the great thing is when you look at the Wraith, like I get a little bit of Zorn from the Morrison X-Men where it feels like the head is actually just a helmet containing this mass power underneath it, and that's what's glowing through.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, we'll say you do find out more about, you get a bit more about what's inside a Wraith in the series.
But, awesome. Yeah. That's just good stuff to look through. Let's talk about the Labor, the everyman of this series. Yeah,
he's intentionally supposed to be the kind of simplest design where he's like, he's even there's a line in this issue where the artisan basically makes fun of what he's made out of, that he's made of literally like scrap from their society. And I wanted him to have like these like yellow construction markings on his arms, kind of like sort of like he's a walking piece of construction vehicle, like just he's definitely supposed to be the simplest looking one. And then his head, this kind of turtle shape, the idea that his head, you can actually see it a little bit in issue 2 that his head can retract in, like when he's dealing with the extreme heat and stuff. But and he's just supposed to be sort of much more the most common everyman character of their world,
Again, I think I brought this up to you one time. He reminds me of Ironhide if Ironhide had a drinking problem.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah. He's definitely he's kind of the good-hearted soul that just went a kind of darker route. That he in another life he could have been really good.
Yeah, I especially love his because his story is probably so far the most tragic of it that it could happen to anybody. Like literally, like. You get up, you're going through the motions of life. You kind of hate what you're doing. You start drinking maybe a little too much, or you're doing something and you're not paying attention, and thus just one little thing can just completely screw up it. Not only ruin a bunch of other lives, but ruin yours at the same time.
Yeah, there was definitely the cautionary tale aspect of him that I liked. This notion that, like, and then also still the gray area because he did cause a lot of deaths too.
Hmm.
That like that is on him. But yeah, but I definitely wanted him to have the most kind of tragic. I mean, well, it's sort of a race to see who has the most tragic because the other ones are still being revealed. But yeah,
Well, you've gotten into. Let's go into the kid
okay,
because you've.
yeah, the kid is. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, no, well, let's we're okay. So the design of the kid, which by the way, kind of does bring up a lot of like, all right, like you're getting into deeper into the how the society works, like building, new robots, new like how do they reproduce and stuff like that. So it is an interesting aspect of all this.
Yeah, there's stuff too also that didn't quite make it into the story because I felt like it was unnecessary. But because we do see kind of a grandmother robot in the issue 3, and my idea of why you would have an old robot is basically like my notion is that the kids class, basically the unfinished class, are given like these tasks, menial tasks, and if they successfully do those, then they get assigned another body, right? So the kid could have become like a labor class or something else. It's really just how you perform initially, but because he was like we see in his flashback, like he accidentally got bumped when he was like still being built on the table.
Hmm.
His casing kind of didn't dry correctly. So one little bump and he never got the chance to kind of even prove what he was capable of. So yeah, I wanted him to be kind of course, the most like sympathetic, innocent one. And the exposed wiring around one eye, I always thought was kind of cute looking. But that's that's basically his origin.
And again, that's the thought of like what you're putting into this, right? Especially the fact that kind of like cars, there's no right there's no really given reason why the society kind of mirrors our own. It just is as it is. I do love that, but it also does bring up those questions like, all right, well, how did these things work? And quietly you've put that stuff in there. And again, I think it's a good reason why I think people are drawn to this book.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I was hoping because it's one thing I was really worried about was their society being so complicated and so hard to understand that I didn't want to spend a lot of time describing. I want to spend basically just enough for what the story needs. And so like that's why they kind of the artist especially speaks so humanly and so offensively is to kind of to make people feel that they're human, right? That
Mm.
they're not, not robots.
Well, considering I heard, I think it was on a Bleeding Cool review that for a new book, especially something that does not contain any human characters, it's kind of rare in this day and age. And the fact that it not only from issue 1 has drawn people in so much, but the fact that it's also taken off, it speaks volumes of the creativity of the whole thing.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, no, I've been really loving the reaction to it. I worked on it quietly. I finished all 6 issues over like 3 or 4 years. Really, it's been a long time, and I had no idea people would like it or they'd respond to the characters. So it's been really rewarding for sure.
So, how far back did you start this?
I think in 2015 or 16, I started to come up with the initial concept, and then just doodling and figuring out like, should it be 4 characters? Should it be 5 characters? Like, what's a good number for them to be sentenced off to? And then when I finally picked like 4 archetypes I liked, then it's just a huge matter of refining and refining it, And then even when it's funny because even like there's lines of dialogue that were in there from the way beginning, but when I saw the final art and it was lettered, I was like, you can cut that line. Like you don't need it. Like I think I learned so much about storytelling by just working on this thing.
Now, were you writing as you went along, or was it something you've been refining in your head for a while?
Yeah, a bit of both. Like I travel for work to Comic-Con, so a lot of time on planes. I'd either be thinking about it or I'd be writing actively on it. It was on my mind all the time. Like even I'd be out drinking with friends or whatever, and I'd have this story in my mind while I was just hanging out. Like it was really something that I was compelled to do. And yeah, and like after that, my process was like I wrote like a big plot of all the events that would happen, and then I went in and like then did individual scripts after that, and those changed and got more and more refined as time went by.
Because it does feel like it does read like it has you have like really thought this stuff out. I mean, there is something to monthly comics where at times it does feel like, okay, like we were under a deadline, just cranking this out. Or here it does feel like a nice refined novel that's gone over several drafts, and you've gotten to the best bits, and that's what we're getting.
Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, that means a lot. And there were things that came late in the game too. I remember like that conversation with what I mentioned before with the artist in the Wraith, where he tells them about like what he's seen out there. That was a late edition, and that's one of my favorite scenes. Is like it was just my way of thinking, like, man, as the characters become more real in your mind, like they truly do start to dictate to you how they would act. Like it really, really feels that way now. So when I kept refining the series, I was like, yeah, you know what? This character would be totally different in this scene. He wouldn't act this way,
It's interesting you say that. I once got to talk to Mike Mignola at Comic-Con.
Oh, nice.
And I was picking his brain because I completely fell in love with the Amazing Screw-On Head. And I was kind of bugging him about it. I'm just like, you ever gonna do more of this? Because this was amazing. He's just like, that's the thing with characters. Sometimes they pop in and, you lay out what you can, and then after that, then they go away. Like, this was one of those, like, I found more people have taken to this guy, but I have nothing for him. Other people seem to have ideas for him. So it's an interesting writer's tidbit. I also had, the people I've ever talked to, especially with art, there's a big mentality of, don't do anything unless you're getting paid for it. I'm like, yes, that works for if you're being hired or if you have a skill set and someone's just trying to kind of glom something off you. But if you're really passionate about something, go and do it anyway. And that's Absolutely. Truly what art is. Like, you put it out there, and if people respond to it, that will be the profit.
Yeah, totally. That's 100%. And then, and also you get the reward of it. Like, I mean, when this thing dropped, it was, this new property that arrived, all the work is finished. So now I can just kind of see people's response to it. Like, it's been a blast. Like, I remember, it was wild to me too, is how quickly the world takes in new characters. Like, I remember when the first issue came out, people were sending me fan art like the next day. It was really, really wild. Like, I'm used to, a new property. It takes a long time for it to go anywhere and get known. But it's like, man, it's a different world now with how active people are on social media. Like, it had a decent opening from the start.
I think that also speaks volumes of the content that's out there right now. I mean, we're in an interesting time with comic books. I mean, the notion of comic books have never been more popular, but meanwhile, the actual industry is kind of struggling.
Yeah.
And you're in it. I'm pretty sure you've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, it's weird. When we were in it, we're sort of, you hear about like the sky is falling and stuff, but I've heard that my entire life with comics. Like ever since, after the boom of the 90s, like I remember, always hearing the comics were doing bad. But I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it in some ways though, it's a really amazing format because it's like, this sci-fi thing, if this story was live action, this would be the biggest budget in the world. It would take like years and years and years to film. Right now, it's like this thing, I have an unlimited budget. I can upload it. I can upload new content of this immediately. You can reach people quicker. I mean, they're inexpensive to buy. So like the same things that hurt comics also sort of help them sometimes where, you can own a whole amazing series for like $20, like Dark Knight Returns. It's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like I think a lot of other things, like the cost of it is so much more. But, the trade-off now is that for all the good that the Marvel movies are, and they're amazing, it's like if you were a Flash fan, now you can get 6 seasons of live-action Flash. Does a 22-page comic hold the same, or 20-page comic hold the same value,
That's very true. But I do think that with comics right now, we're in a weird time that the mainstream stuff, the stuff that gets the most eyes, is kind of turning people off a little bit. Meanwhile, you look at the indie side, and any comic store I've ever talked to, they're like, yeah, the Image books, the more self-published stuff, that seems to be the stuff that the audience that has grown with it are gearing towards right now.
That's great. That's great to hear too, because it's like for a couple reasons. One is I think with a lot of things too, it's like there's this, there's a desire to kind of just see, well, maybe they'll like this. Maybe there's a lot of companies are doing it, right? Whereas as opposed to having a solid story that they really want to tell, it's more feeling like what's going to sell. Maybe they'll like this one, and like maybe they'll like this change of this character. Whereas I think, the indie side is amazing because it's generally people that are really passionate about their specific stories. Like I can only speak for the Killlock, but like these characters mean a lot to me, and I really felt like this was an interesting story.
Well, I mean, exactly. I mean, and I think that's why people have taken to it so much, because even on the industry, when I'm looking through like stuff that I'm not exactly familiar with, I'm like, that looks interesting. Killlock, that's one of those books that, especially the covers, jumps right at you. You're like, what the hell is this?
Oh, thank you, man. No, that means a lot. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to expect of it at all, too, because there's also, for good and bad, there's a lot of self-published content out there. Or not self-published, but independent creator-owned content out there. And, like, a new book showing up. Like, I think I was reading an interview with Mike Choi, and he said this good point where he's like, man, you go to a comic shop and there's a lot of books that are just sitting there that no one's talking about. And that was someone's magnum opus they put all their heart and soul into. And that scared me, the idea that this thing would come out and no one would care, you know? Like I still, I'll do this say though, I still would have felt it worth doing, you know, even if this thing came out and no one bought it or anything, like the process of making it was so fun that it was absolutely worth it. But
well, yeah. And again, back to my main point, that speaks volumes. I think the general public they were kind of hungering for something a little different. That part of it is your art, man. Your art stands out unlike anything else that's out there right now.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. The interiors, especially the whole thing. Every page looks like a painting. It reminds me of the early New Mutants books.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, that's high praise.
Yes, and again, you look at you're just like, holy shit! Like someone and the fact that it's one guy. Like you're not. This wasn't a team book. This was one person, and you pour through like everything, the layouts, the colors, just everything that was used, and the fact that it's all out of your head, and that you were pretty much the main guy doing all this. That I think that speaks to the whole creative process, and people can really gravitate. It's like, oh yeah, it's not this one guy that wrote it, and then this guy interpreted it in the art. It's like it's like here's the guy that did it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm always motivated by the people that you can tell are really driving the ship, like in movies, you know, like in his heyday, like Francis Ford Coppola, like, you know, wrote The Godfather, directed The Godfather, same with like Apocalypse Now, and like, you know, I really like those guys that are like, I have a story, I'm going to control so much of this, you know, you're really going to get, you know, all of me. It's not like a collaboration. Although I will have to say that Tom Long, who lettered this book, did an amazing job. Like he came up with, you know, the Wraiths font and the lettering overall, everything. And I just really, really love working with him. He was there. He was kind of the quiet partner from the beginning too, before anyone knew this book even existed. So.
Well, it does speak. Yeah. I mean, it does speak to the cult of personality of directors. I mean, there's very few writers that get held up. There's very few editors that get held up. It's always, you know, it's the actor and the director, but it does come through. Like you look at a Sam Raimi movie, and you're like, that's a Sam Raimi movie right there. You look at a Coen Brothers movie, and like, yes, that's a Coen Brothers film. Like you can even close Coen's even especially like you just close your eyes and you listen. You're like, yeah, that's Coen dialogue. Like, so again, speaks volume to the control of it all. Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah. No, definitely for sure. I agree.
Interesting note. You started doing commentary for your comics.
I did, yeah, because it kind of ties in right what we're saying. One thing I love listening to is kind of director audio commentaries, where I've learned a lot from listening to those, and I really, really enjoy them. And so I thought it would be cool to kind of share my thoughts, like a running stream of consciousness on the book. So on YouTube channel, just under my name, Livio Ramondelli, you can find commentaries for the first 3 issues, and I'll be about to put up a commentary for the 4th soon.
Where did that when did that pop in your head? Like, fuck, this is something I want to do.
I just always thought about doing it. Like even when I was working on the series, I was kind of trying to keep track of sketches and the other ideas that I worked on that didn't make it into the final product. I was like, you know, people might be interested, because I certainly am interested in hearing about like what the versions were that, you know, didn't make it through. And yeah, I mean, like I just thought that would be kind of hopefully interesting for the people out there, because I also think there's so many young fans who are always asking us about what our process is like, you know, and what ideas we reject. And so I was like, yeah, they probably would like to see, you know, or hear like what changes went in and why.
Yeah. Are you adding like unproduced like sketches and stuff with that, or is it just your kind of? I haven't watched the latest one, but are you adding extra content with it?
So far, no. So far, I'm just doing audio commentary, but I will be doing. There's mountains of sketches and layouts and stuff that no one's seen. That some might go in the trade paperback, but then I probably will share more online too. It's also like you don't want to. You know, I don't want to spam people every day with content for this book, even though it's, you know, I'm obviously really excited it's coming out and everything. But I want to be, I don't want to monopolize people's time and attention, you know.
Right. All right.
Oh, good.
I live in a house with a woman that runs the heater 24/7, so it wreaks havoc with my sinuses.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So you have to excuse me when I keep pausing like that. It's just I'm trying not to cough and or.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah. So where were we? So your art process. Let's go through that.
Sure. Yeah. So I start off. Yeah. Every page is it's pencil and paper. Mm-hmm. Just Bristol board. I still like the feeling the most of doing it that way. But then I scan it in, and then I color it in Photoshop. I usually use a Mobile Studio Pro for everything,
Hmm.
but yeah, and that's been the process for the whole series.
Now, when you're laying out, like, because this book is thick with panels, like
Yeah.
you put a lot into these books. Like, how are you laying? How is the laying out process going as you're drawing?
That's really tricky because it's like some of it is really easy and some of it's surprisingly hard because even things that seem really obvious can be a nightmare of like in issue 2, right? When they go to the kind of the party planet, there's the Wraith and the artisan dealing with these like frat boy robots, and then there's the kid and the laborer in a bar. And the conversation kind of cuts back and forth between those two areas, and knowing when to cut, when to go back, like that's like surprisingly difficult because you're writing it and drawing it. So sometimes the writer in you wants scenes to go on longer, and the artist has to be like, no, man, there's too many pages or too many panels here. We gotta fit everything into 22 pages. So because I really wanted every one of these issues to feel significant. I wanted a lot of information to kind of like make each one a cool ride. Like every single issue that comes out is a big jump forward in the story. I didn't want any kind of filler issue. And then sometimes that means putting a lot of ideas in and then sacrificing some ideas you don't have time for. So
It does feel like there's zero bullshit. There's zero fat on this in this book whatsoever. Like there's a point in the first issue where you have the second and third page are this beautiful splash page, and then you go into like just very much because when I'm sitting here reading this book, it's like okay, cool. Like I'm getting everything that's going on, but you look at it and you're looking at the art that goes into it, and just how many panels. I'm just like damn. Like, but each one feels like that splash page. Like you put just as much care and effort into those smaller panels than like the big wild like here's in your face almost painting aspects of them.
oh, thank you, no man, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I love environmental design and lighting, and so that's why like almost every panel really has like a background, and they're in a particular place. So yeah, I mean, I think like that's like one of my favorite things to do. So
How much?
yeah, I mean, yeah.
How much? Were there points where you had something that was very dialogue? You thought you were going to split it up, but you realized you had to do it through the actual. You had to tell the scene through the artwork itself.
There's a couple moments like things where I just like even like again when the thing was finally lettered, I would just remove the lettering. I remember in issue 2, there's this moment where after the artisan kind of lies to them about like the ship not being able, or the ship's engines are going to be okay, and he takes off and like destroys entire blocks. He walks out of the room and the laborer says like he's going to be a serious problem, and the Wraith, there's a panel where the Wraith looks at the laborer, and I had this caption of the Wraith's thoughts where he was like he's not the only one, but I was like you don't need that. You kind of feel it in the art when the Wraith looks at the laborer. He kind of, I hope that you can feel that he's thinking like you weren't behaving ideally on the last planet either.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those moments where I was like or even just for cleanliness of reading it, there's sometimes where when you write something in a script, you can kind of imagine the bubbles, but when you see them on the page, you don't want it to be like completely overloaded.
Well, this last issue had that, especially with the stinger at the end, like the when the artisan and the child managed to get below ground, while the laborer is taking on the what do you call those two things?
Which one? Say that again.
The at the last on issue 4.
Yes.
The last 2 pages, they finally get to the area where the kill lock cure is supposed to be, and they fight those two kind of like hodgepodge kind of creations.
Yeah, I call them the Leviathans because there's this line where the Wraith or the artisan says they're Leviathan class, like the idea that they're this kind of, they're sort of a version of the labor class that works in deep space. So their bodies are meant to withstand like real intense pressures, and that's why it's the first time in the series we've seen anything that's even like a remote physical threat to the Wraith.
So there's a beautiful scene like towards the end, and this is the first thing I've ever read digitally, by the way, because
nice.
Because all my comics all my comic stores were out, so I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna buy it on Comixology. And Comixology has this interesting way of going about the paneling, and there was at least
the guided view.
Do what?
You're talking about Comixology has something called the guided view. Is that what you're using, or
It
someone
might
else?
have been. It might have been because I opened it up and I just started clicking, the right to move to the next page. And there was a couple of portions, especially with the Leviathans reveal, where they had the close up of the first one, and then it looked like this exact same panel, but they would pull back and you see that there were two.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, what that is you can turn that setting off if you don't like it. Some people like it, some people don't. That's the guided view, which they do a really good job with it too. They make it very cinematic, like a movie, where they'll be close up and then they'll pull back to a wide shot. Like they do a really good job of really understanding the story and what works best, because that's something that we handle on our end. That's all stuff from their end of like when the camera moves and that kind of thing. But I was really happy with how that looked.
I'll give him credit on that. There were points where I'm just like, holy shit! Like, and it did make the scene pop a little bit more, especially the reveal of the Leviathans. And that very end, the ending, there's a close up of the artisan, and then not to spoil it, but the reveal at the very end. You're just like, oh shit! Like the way that they made the page move, it was just like, fuck! I could see that in the actual page now. See how that played
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, they did a good job. Like I was initially someone who was kind of skeptical about digital, that kind of formatting where they're forcing your eye where to look. But I thought they really like pulled it off well. I thought it felt like a very natural thing.
Well, it speaks volumes to your direction and art, especially the fact that each scene now, like each, I can tell like each, panel's getting its own like attention, and I'm like just like, wow, this, because that's where you really look. You're like, fuck, man, there's so much detail and just pretty much like kind of love put into each of these panels. Like there's nothing wasted in this book whatsoever.
Oh, cool. No, thank you so much. Yeah, that means a lot. That's what I was hoping for. Like I was hoping that it really felt like a satisfying read. And every time a new issue comes out, that's one reason that the flashbacks are important too. Is I felt like it was a nice way of hopefully driving people's anticipation. Like, oh man, we're gonna get this flashback next issue. Like the story moves forward in the present, but it also moves forward in the past, and you get more about these characters.
So
So,
you heard something like this is a little, just congratulations on your end. What did you get from what was it, IDW or Diamond told you about the solicitations?
oh, thank you. Yeah, it was very cool. I talked to IDW, and basically, I had heard things before that issue 2 had like sold out a week after it was in stores, which was amazing. But then I just heard that it's reached allocation status, the series in general, which means that it's the orders are so high that there literally just aren't enough printed copies to satisfy everyone. So if a store orders like 30 copies, they're only going to get 10 in. So apparently that's a very good sign, and that bodes well for the trade paperback, that the demand is much higher than they expected. So that's great. I mean, that's especially like a new property having that following pretty quickly, because it's only been out as of today, it's been out 4 months. Like that's been something I really really liked.
Have you found any? Was it like in the fans that you've interacted with online? Have you found that how many of them came over from your Transformer work, and how many were just I just was walking through my store and I found it?
That's a good question. Thankfully, because I wanted to reach new people, a lot of them seem new. Like, there's definitely a good bit of Transformers fans which is also cool, because a lot of them are artists. They send me amazing art. But I've gotten quite a few emails from people that I know have not read anything Transformers I did, and they were really, really complimentary about it. Like they were saying that, they said, especially when the first issue came out, I got a lot of random emails from people. There was even a Marvel editor that emailed me to say that he'd heard so much good things about it. And that was really nice, because it's like, you work on these things in a vacuum, and you're like, I hope, any of them will respond to it, but yeah.
Well, I'm glad that, because it's wildly original. It's a wonderful lesson to a lot of other people that because again, going back to the conversation we were having earlier about a lot of the indie books, a lot of them are like kind of like almost pulpy, like they're kind of modern pulp. Like it's a lot of crime stories. There are some like kind of outlandish sci-fi stories. A lot of horror. I have found there's a ton of horror out there. But
Yeah, definitely.
but
Yeah.
something like this like kind of leaps out at you. It's very like the last book that kind of leaped out where I'm like, I'm taking a chance. Never heard of anybody involved with this. For me was The Strange Talent of Luther Strode.
Oh, nice.
It was Tradmore and Justin Jordan. Never heard. I saw something. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give this book a try. I opened up the first book, and your first issue was the first time in about 8 years I had that like, fuck, I love all this. Like right away, I immediately fell in love with it. That Luther
Nice.
Strode
Oh,
was the
thank
last
you.
book that had that effect on me.
Oh, thanks, dude. That really means a lot. I really appreciate it.
So, little side thing. What are you doing right now while everyone's held up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, thankfully, like I worked from home already for about 10 years, so that part of it's not new to me. the hard thing is like losing all the Comic Cons, right? Because
Mhm.
that's, and of course, the general safety of the world, and everyone's afraid. And
But
stuff.
still,
But,
I don't.
yeah, but yeah,
There's a
the
lot of
fighting.
people that don't realize that's your guys' livelihood for a lot of, for a lot
Yeah,
of artists.
yeah, absolutely. And then they just announced that Diamond is shutting down comic sales for now, or cutting down shipping for now. So a lot of stores are sort of panicking. So I mean, we're all kind of, life's on pause in general for everyone. So yeah. In the meantime, I've just kind of been just working on other projects. Like I'm working on a couple things I can't really talk about yet, but
Hmm.
they were sort of in the works even before all this happened. So thankfully, like that working from home hasn't changed. But yeah.
Has this whole experience really propelled you to start working on some other original stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely has. Like I was talking to a buddy of mine, and we were saying that, if the world wasn't so afraid right now, it would in a way not be a bad situation to have all this extra time at home to work on stuff and get your ideas across. Like like that it's kind of more time than ever. Like I've been keeping a little unusual hours lately. I've been staying up to like 3 or 4 in the morning, but I've been working a lot. So
Hmm.
I've been working late at night, and just those peaceful hours where there's nothing going on has been really nice, really helpful.
Well, it's like, where the hell are you going to go?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
There's
Yeah.
no, you can't go out, can't go party, you can't even get dinner with anybody right now. So,
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So I think like, yeah, I mean, it's been good. Like the work time. It's been bad to not know when this was going to end. Like
yeah.
if we knew a firm date of like, beginning of May would go back to normal, I think it would be a lot more manageable for everyone.
Have you heard? So since Diamonds, have you heard anything about your book? Considering we're with 2 more issues left, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So do you think they're going to release them digitally? Have you heard anything on that yet?
I have not heard. I think because they just announced the decision to stop comic shipments, I think yesterday or the day before. So things are moving really quickly. I know IDW and the other companies are really committed to still helping store owners and getting product to them. But I think it's, I don't know about digital, but it's also just the physical. There's options of using other printing companies if they're up and running to ship stuff.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, I think it struck everyone so quickly, like how fast all of this has moved that, even the digital comics, I don't quite know how that works, if they're already kind of formatted and ready to go, or if they'd be on pause. I mean, in a way, it's an ideal time to read from home right now.
Yeah. Well,
Like
like, shit, I reorganized my room the other day. I'm like, fuck, I got like 12 books I bought over the last year. I haven't read. I'm like, well, you got nothing but time. Now be the time
Yeah,
to do it. So,
yeah. I mean, in a way, yeah, to get caught up on. There's a lot of movies and stuff I've been wanting to see that and books too. So it's, yeah, that side of it has been good.
on that note, is there any place that people can contact you? And if they want, like maybe they can get a commission or something done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm taking commissions now. You can hit me up on Twitter or Instagram, or you can just email me. So all my information's online. If you just search for my name, you'll find everything. And yeah, my email is on I think all my social media, and then also my website. So just hit me up. Happy to do a commission for you, any character you like.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I know you're kind of busy. We're kind of getting close on time, so I think we'll wrap it up here.
Okay.
Again, if you guys are at home and your store's not open, I would say, yeah, go to Comixology, or if you do have a store that does have any back issues, go pick this back issue up. And then while you're at it, maybe go pick up some of his Transformer issues too.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast to talk to you.
No, thank you for thank you for coming on. Again, this is as you have your project, this is my project right now. Just talking to the people I admire, and I admire their work especially. So,
Well, thank you so much, man. And thank you for putting out content like this. That's good for all of us. We all really need it right now.
no problem. Like, it all harkens back to that masterful Apocalypse piece you did, man. That
Oh, thanks, dude.
thing that caught my eye. I'm going to put that up there as the header for this episode. But yeah, but so that will do it for this edition of Neo PsychoBabble. Again, put out your Twitter handle and Instagram, wherever else people can find you again.
Sure. Yeah, it's just my full name, so Livio Ramondelli. That's my Twitter and my Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Ramondelli spelled.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Ramondelli.
So yeah, because it gets a little weird.
It is a long name. Yeah.
It's very Italian.
It very much is. Yeah. I'm always jealous of your name, man.
It's short, and turns out there's not a hell of a lot of Eatons out there too. So
yeah, I feel like even most people could probably guess the spelling of it pretty easily, right?
You'd be surprised.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah. Huh.
Everyone's.
Wow.
I have gotten a lot of Eaton, like they've just eaten something. I'm like, no, it's an English name. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, look, I'm a big guy, so I always tell people
Yeah.
it's eating like I'm eating too much, but I'm not eating. So
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah.
that I get a lot of that, but
Nice.
we don't get to choose the name we're born with. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's very true.
well, thanks again. Again, you can find Kill Lock right now on Comixology if you're curious and you haven't picked up the book. That's probably the best way to go about it. And give Livio and all your favorite artists some support right now because these are kind of trying times for everyone. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, we really appreciate it. Yeah.
all right, well that will do it for this edition. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.